Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the AMD Radeon Extravaganza Qualifier. We're here in the lower bracket finals. My name is Slow Wolf. With me is Master Dalk. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, and I'm excited. We're about to get into what I thought was actually going to be the grand finals, but turns out to be a winners round one and then losers finals match. It's going to be EJK versus Believe, and speaking of, we're going to be spawning on top of our blue Terran player. Representing the United States here today, it is EJK.
On the bottom side of the map, we have our green Protoss player representing Canada in this particular matchup. We've got Believe. Whether or not he can represent it as well as Steadfast did in that one match where he started to sing "Oh Canada," I don't know. But I believe that Believe can do a good job here. I'm funny. So we have the pylon coming out. This time it is not a proxy pylon. Believe is keeping it close to home.
Yeah. It's also behind his mineral line, so I suspect that we might be getting a Stargate, or maybe he rushes into Dark Templar. Something where he wants to keep it hidden away. Also, there is the possibility of he's using this to kind of hold off the mineral line in case of Reapers, as it's a very wide mineral line. It's a lot harder to block off. So putting a Cybernetics core down, it would allow Believe an easier time in trying to chase a Reaper, should there be one, and it's looking like there will be, as we've got a refinery and a barracks on the way, as well as an SCV heading out onto the map.
This is probably the first time I've seen a Reaper out of a Terran player early on in like since the beginning of all the series that we've been watching. I haven't, like, the Reapers have not been coming out, which is interesting considering just how powerful the opening move tends to be, especially against Believe, who ended up going down to a couple of really good instant Reapers the last time he faced off against EJK, and it looks like EJK remembers that, so he's going to send out another Reaper quite early. This time though, there is a different build coming out of Believe, so we'll see whether or not that particular build ends up making a difference in this case, as the Reaper now coming to within a couple of seconds of being finished.
Indeed, and right now it looks like so far EJK is trying to throw down a command center at his natural. Will be doing just that, and it looks like he'll be going up to just content with the single Reaper, and we'll actually steal some gold minerals on the way back home.
Well, you got to make sure that your SCV's trip out to the grocery mart ends up being worth it. Why not some gold minerals, right? On the flip side here, though, we do have the capacity to build Stalkers. Believe now under fire, however, as this Reaper comes in and starts chunking away. Down goes one probe. The core going to come out to defend this base and tell that Reaper to go home. It can't stay here. It doesn't have to go home, but it can't stay in the base. The Reaper, yeah, it's going to go ahead and recuperate with its combat drugs, and it's going to come back in a couple of seconds to wreak some havoc. Unfortunately, comes in at maybe the wrong spot, as it's right underneath the mothership core, and the mothership core is going to do a decent number on it. The Reaper, on the flip side, not going to do nearly enough to really constitute anything worthwhile, so it's just going to have to back off. In the meantime, back home, the command center is almost finished, and we've got a couple more barracks being built, so going for the medevac Marines or something like that, I'm guessing. Stalker's going to come out, and that's going to stop the Reaper from being able to do much. All things considered, one probe was lost in that assault, which, honestly, it's kind of an even trade with a Reaper that hasn't died yet.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, but right now, you know, he's going to be coming back in. There's a Stalker, there's a mothership core here. You're not going to be able to do too much, and it's going to go down. Won't actually be able to make the full trip, and I'm wondering if he saw the Twilight Council. He did not, in fact, see the Twilight Council. So, you know, Believe in EJK, they practice together quite a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if he expected Blink Plate to be coming in, as in their previous match today, he had been. He had been waiting. He had bunkers set up on the high ground for Stalkers to be coming in. And even look at this, he's got a bunker getting thrown down off at the front ramp. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's fully prepared for the Blink harassment coming in from the Stalkers.
Well, it seems like he's preparing for that. One way to deal with that is a ton of Marines. He's got a reactor barracks and another barracks just by itself, pumping out Marines as fast as it can. On the flip side, we got the tech lab barrack as well, which would normally be able to produce Marauders, which are really good against like Stalkers in terms of the amount of damage they can pump out. But it's not doing that. Instead, it's just pumping out. It just pumped out a Marine, and it's just kind of sitting there otherwise. He is building a factory, though. What do you think the factory's going to end up building?
It's probably more just there so he can fulfill the requirement for the starport. Honestly, I don't see that factory doing too much. Maybe a Widow Miner too, just so that way you can help cover some more ground. There's a lot of open space to get blinked into here on this map. Mm-hmm. But yeah, besides that, I don't really see it doing too much.
You don't, and there's like you don't see it doing anything out like outside of like siege tanks or anything like that. They're just going to go straight into starport. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so you go straight into starport, but not before he starts building a reactor on there. Do you think the reactor's for the factory, or is he going to use the reactor for a different building?
Probably for the starport, since they are placed right next to each other, anyways.
So what can you like out of the starport then with the reactor? What do you think he's going to aim to do? Is he just going to pump out banshees like it's no one else's business, or?
Pumping out medevacs, just like as we see right now, we've got a lot of bio on the way, and EJK normally, if he's started with the bio, he's going to be sticking with it. So probably going to be getting up some medevacs and just continuing with it as having two medevacs come out rather than one medevac come out. It's definitely a big difference.
Absolutely a big difference. And I'm sorry about my earlier error. I meant Viking, not Banshee. That's my bad. But yeah, medevacs makes a lot more sense. The Stalkers came in to harass a little bit around the front. They ended up doing some damage to the bunker, which just gets repaired up by the SCV anyway. Not a big deal. But the Stalkers aren't done yet. There's a fairly large contingent of them now, and they can see their way in. There's an observer hiding right there on the south side of the base. The Marines are wise to it, though. They're not going to get themselves jumped for no good reason. Stalkers instead are just going to go around the front and do their best to hit this supply depot. The most damaged one blinks out away. One of the Stalkers, however, does get caught with its pants down, and it's going to end up going down as a result. So, supply depot for a Stalker. I'm not exactly sure if that's necessarily awesome, but I'll have to do.
Right now, believe he was trying to just keep EJK in his base. As we see, a third Nexus coming down for Believe. And, you know, there's already a Marine here, but it looks like the bio is actually going to be continuing to give chase. Now that EJK knows that there is a third base up, he's going to try pushing forward as he can probably tell. Oh, okay, you're playing kind of greedy here. You've probably not got too much of an army. And, again, Believe he's not the kind to go. He either goes really early or really late for his attacks. So we're kind of entering that little window of time where if you went and attacked Believe with a strong bio force, you could probably win the game.
And in this case, you know, he's been trading really well with his medevacs. They've been healing up nicely. None of the medevacs have gone down, as far as I can tell. And the resources for the units lost on either side are practically even. So they're on even footing in terms of how they've spent their resources. But as far as supply goes, and in this case the army supply, it does seem to be very much in the Terran's favor by about 600 or so minerals, and like the supply in general is just a tiny bit higher. The armies are almost even, but it is slightly in the Terran's favor. Based off of the army makeup, though, we do have a couple of Colossi, and if there's anything the Colossi are good at, it's defeating bio armies. Like we've seen in previous matches with Seraph, Believe can use those Colossi extremely well.
Yeah, and right now, though, it's actually 60 to 80 army supply in favor in Seraph, as Seraph has actually got a bit of, or not Seraph, EJK is a bit cutting back on his worker production, so he's able to just throw all of his money at his army. As we can see, there's not even a single SCV entering this production queue right now, though it probably is because he's been on the two bases for a while now. He's reached saturation point, but he is going to be flying his third orbital command center down towards the third base and going to be saturating it soon.
As we look at things right now, there's a couple of Widowmaker drops and a couple of Marauders and Marines being shipped in on the left side of the map. And right front and center, we've got Marauders, Marines, a very strong diversionary force, just ready to go ahead and make some havoc, while these medevacs go in the back and do their best to do some flanking, some residual damage, while the Protoss forces aren't looking. And we talked before about Protoss mobility. Do you think that this is going to be a very big problem, or do you think that do you think that Believe is going to find out about this before it's too late and it wipes out his probes?
I'm thinking, believe he's going to be stretched a little thin here, though EJK isn't quite attacking with his full force. Actually, Stalker's blinking in, taking care of a medevac before it even gets a drop, but we've got more medevacs heading in towards the main now, and those are the ones with the middle lines. May even be able to get rid of those forges before they can finish their upgrades. Looks like the bio over at the natural is going to get cleaned up. The bio over in the main will be able to prevent mining, but a lot of Colossi, a lot of Zealots will be able to clean that up.
The main, most of the probes made it out alive, but a good number of them were destroyed in that. Still, overall, was that a successful strike out of the Terrans? It's maybe not done yet, as a couple of Marauders and Marines try to make their way. One of the Marauders is completely surrounded and chopped in half as his body falls apart. The rest of the Protoss are sitting there waiting for him and catching any stragglers. There are a couple of Widowmines still sitting in the base, and they're going to wipe out another couple of probes off of one of those shots. And a couple of medevacs just sitting there completely empty. So, right now, was that an effective strike? Did that do what EJK set out to do?
I don't think it did at all. Taking a look at the resources lost tab, it's 3,100 resources lost by Believe to 4,937 of EJK. That's more than 2,000 resources lost of a gap. And so EJK is definitely not quite in the best position right now, especially since Believe was able to retain quite a bit of his army, as right now it's 107 army supply to 95 in favor of Believe, and all 4 Colossi stayed alive. That is the key factor here. We've got the area of effect all remaining in for our Protoss player.
Oh, in comes the Colossi. He's testing for Widow Mines. And he doesn't find any quite yet. Oh, they're going to find a couple right there as the Observer comes in and helps them clean those out. And the ones in the base. So Believe doesn't have to worry about those in his base. And then Believe is also doing some work on the expansion as well. Dropped in a couple of Zealots that did some work that have kind of occupied some of the Terran forces. Now Believe coming in on EJK's third expansion, doing some decent damage. But not before losing some of their Zealots, and the Observer's going to go down. One of the Zealots gets chased down. Now the Colossi, after having their forces split, the Terran forces split up, the Colossi are doing whatever numbers they can against these Valkyries, against these Marauders. But the Valkyries are very strong counter to Colossi, since they can't really be hit, but can still hit the Colossi due to their very tall size. That was a bit of a mistake, I think, coming out of Believe. Still, there's a Zealot that's kind of working away at the command center on the natural expansion, and like the entire expansion's been wiped out. There are no SCVs working there right now.
Yep, and there was 47 workers killed in total this game so far by our Protoss player Believe. 150 total units killed. It's a bit ridiculous, but for right now, in the meanwhile, Believe is in an amazing position, to be honest. He's got 1-1 on the Zealot has actually just gotten itself 3 extra SCV kills. But Believe has got 3-3 on the way. He's got Archons finishing up. He's even got a 4th base in the works. Whereas EJK is only just finishing up 2-2, and that's why a lot of these fights have been going Believe's way. But this time around, EJK, he's got a lot of forces aided by a lot of these SCVs. Storm goes down on a handful of Marauders. We'll be able to do bit of damage.
And if that's just a precursor to the oncoming storm, which happens to be the Archons, a lot of damage coming out, the Zealots charging in, doing a little bit, and wow! At that point, immediately after seeing Archons, EJK says, nope, I'm not dealing with that. GG's. Believe gonna take this first game in this best of 3 in the lower bracket finals.
Yep, and no, I'd have to say the Archons, as well as the fact that Storm is out, is what caused EJK to have to tap out right away. And it becomes very difficult as a Terran player when you've got very few forces, and most of it is SCVs.
Most of his SCVs, of which one Zealot can take out a vast number of them before they go out. But that was a bit of a departure from what happened the first couple times we saw these players duke it out. which ended up going to a game 3. So I can only imagine that this time, EJK really wants to go ahead and bring this to a game 3 right now, but Believe is going to try his best to clinch this out as a 2-0 series. Do you think that that's going to happen, or do you think that it's going to be kind of a repeat of what happened with the first best of 3? Like, do you think it's going to go to a 3-game series, or do you think that Believe can clinch this right here and now?
I have a feeling Believe can clutch this one out. There's been many of times where in a double elimination situation, Believe he'll lose in the winners, and then he'll just beat the exact same person in the losers. So we'll have to see how well we can do. This game number 2 is going to be on Echo, and
Believe's done really well on Echo. We saw it. Yeah, that match against Seraph, the last match against Seraph, Believe ended up doing a really good number with Echo and placing his proxies where they needed to be. But the strategy that Believe went this time to counter the incoming Reaper attacks that EJK put out ended up working out really well for him, because he was able to keep his stuff safe. EJK didn't notice the Twilight Council until it was too late. And all things considered, like, Believe did a better job of adapting, which is something that a lot of these players just don't necessarily do. In order to keep their game fresh, in order to keep their matches unpredictable, and that's kind of the most important part, is being unpredictable. If anything, Steadfast really good at being unpredictable as well, as he was able to kind of just maneuver his Zerg forces in different ways based off of what they needed, off of what he wanted to do. Believe proving that he can do the same thing, so that was pretty good. EJK, on the other hand, we'll see whether or not